Most people don't really like the winter. And a lot of people, including myself, when it does turn to winter, they reminisce on the summertime and talk about how much better those days were in comparison. Even if you like the winter, we get where they're coming from. It's cold. But we all know that seasons work in cycles. So no matter what, unless the sun explodes, we will return to the summer in 2 more turns. It doesn't always feel like it though. Unfortunately, this isn't a drill. I wish I was being melodramatic or clickbaity, but things are about to seriously change and impact the way that all of us live our lives. And I think that my generation, 18 to 25, might be hit the worst. Since 2020, we've been beaten down with catastrophe after catastrophe. Lockdown for 2 years, inflation is going insane, and now the UK and US are about to enter another recession guaranteed in 2023. But it doesn't stop there. If we look back into history, it dictates this decade may be the most difficult one we've had since the 1940s. And you can imagine what that might entail. Before you call me out on bullshit and say that I'm 20 years old and don't have a monkey's what I'm talking about, this information is not my own. Authors William Strauss and Neil Howe in their book The Fourth Turning talk about how in recent history works in 80-year blocks with 4 seasons inside each one. These seasons are spearheaded by a new generation each time, with each one coming about 20 years later. Prophets, nomads, heroes, and artists. We'll come back to these in a moment. Don't click off this video now because without this knowledge, things may become very difficult. The book says how the prophet generation, our grandparents, were born generally during the high of the West immediately after World War II. Birth rate skyrocketed, everyone had secure jobs and family units were at their strongest in history. I will save you the details of the nomad and hero generations, but just know that nomads would be your parents. History seems to keep repeating itself every 80 years or so. Back in the 1860s, we had the Civil War. In the 1940s, we had World War II. And 80 years later in 2020, according to history, we are due another big disaster. It seems to be, at least in the last 400 years or so, every disaster has come at a time when the artist generation were in their youth. This is known as the fourth turning. This is all quite shocking information, I understand. But when we take a look at the conventional artist generation, which is characterised as having overprotective parents, are sensitive, compassionate, and are very change-oriented, and also are too young to understand or have experienced the atrocities of the last fourth turning, it becomes quite apparent that we are actually the artist generation. We've never been more divided. We value feelings over facts. There's been so many social movements in this decade already that I've already lost count of them. History dictates that we're in the fourth turning, and I believe that we're on the cusp of something quite dangerous. Strauss and Howe talks in their book about the catastrophes that have come to our life since the 2020s, as well as disasters such as the 2 towers in 2001. You're probably thinking at this point, well, this doesn't prove anything. You know, countless of people spoke about this sort of stuff, as well as the fact that loads of people have been making up conspiracies about the 2020 pandemic. This book, The Fourth Turning, was written 30 years ago. They predicted the 2020 pandemic nearly 30 years early. This is daunting information, but it's nothing to panic over, as long as you're willing to prepare for the future. We're in a generation that values pleasure over hard work, sex over love, and virtue signalling over actual values. I do believe that a lot of us are going to crumble in this fourth turning. If you can learn to break the mold like we're trying to, then as a collective, we can figure out the exact steps that we need to take in order to prepare for this fourth turning. We can even start now and become strong by choice, or we can be forced to. It's up to you. Our parents are in a generation where they can remember the previous seasons, and they hate the winter that the country is currently in. They always recall about how the summertime was better. Even without rose-tinted glasses, they're not actually wrong. The time that they're referring to is from the 60s to the 90s, a time just before the fourth turning. Spring, summer, and autumn. So what are some things you can start doing today to immediately prepare for difficult times? I'll give you 3 things, and they all fall under the bracket of wealth. 1, get in the gym. A strong body creates a strong mind, and the discipline that you will learn from lifting weights will translate into every other aspect of your life. 2, read. An educated man is a wealthy man. And none of that fiction bullshit. We need information on how to sort ourselves out financially and mentally. I don't care if you don't like reading. What do you hate more, reading or being a pussy? 3 books that I would recommend is Jack Donovan's The Way of Men, Money by Rob Moore, and The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters. Buy them now. All right, knowledge is power. They can control us because we're too stupid to know what's going on. Number 3, face your demons. We've become way too comfortable with distracting ourselves rather than facing the darkest parts of our psyches. It took me 1 year to sort myself out and come out the other side with no mental issues. This generation has so many problems because we're way too distracted to actually look inwards. Don't blame anything else for your mindset. It is your fault. And I say that as someone who was once in your shoes. In conclusion, the 4th turning, a time of disaster and hardship, is predicted and inevitable to begin this decade. Because we know that history works in 80-year cycles now, we can look forward to a brighter tomorrow. But we have to put the hard work in. Strengthen your mind, body and soul. And if you need somewhere for guidance, then come join us on the channel. We are going to be trying to improve ourselves as much as possible, and we're going to share everything that we find with you. Let's create a support system as we begin to enter difficult times. Boys and girls, this has been Geese Feeders, and we'll see you in the next video. Everything just got real.
Geese Feeders out.
I'm savage, so be playing what's happening. 2 yards running with a fully automatic. Heart full of pain and a head full of heaven.